Have you ever gone to bed, everything quiet, the lights off, and yet your mind keeps spinning with the same thoughts? What if something happens to me? It's too late to change anything now, or no one really needs me anymore. These thoughts whisper in the dark, steal your peace, and make sleepless nights feel even heavier. But you're not alone, and you're not powerless. Today, I want to talk about 5 nighttime thoughts that quietly drain our strength and show you how to gently face them without pills or heavy conversations, just small, kind steps. If even one of these thoughts sounds familiar to you, then you're already not alone. Let me start with a thought I hear more often than you'd expect. I'm too old to change anything. And you know what? I never judge people for saying it because it usually doesn't come from laziness. It comes from exhaustion. When you've lived a full life, raised kids, worked hard, buried loved ones, or simply carried responsibilities for decades, the idea of starting something new can feel not just tiring but pointless. Your brain may say, "What's the use?" while your heart whispers that you might still want more. I want you to know that quiet longing is real and it's worth listening to. Physiologically, our brains don't stop learning with age. In fact, new neural connections can still form, especially when we challenge ourselves gently. Psychologically, trying new things helps reduce anxiety and lifts self-esteem. And even something small can bring that sense of aliveness back. I remember Harold, 72, from Dayton, Ohio. He lost his wife of 49 years to cancer, and after that, everything just stopped. He used to walk around his block twice a day, sometimes 3, but after her passing, he stayed indoors. Not out of physical inability, but because he couldn't see the point anymore. When I met him, he said, "My days feel like empty wrappers. I unwrap each one and there's nothing inside." We didn't start with anything drastic. I just asked him to tell me one thing he'd never done, no matter how small. After some thought, he said, "I've never eaten Thai food." That week, we found a local place with delivery. He didn't love the spicy noodles, but he laughed for the first time in months. Next week, he called his granddaughter on FaceTime, just to show her the takeout. That little step turned into another, a walk to the diner 2 blocks down, a chat with a neighbor he hadn't spoken to in years. Within 3 months, Harold was taking a short photography class at the community center. Nothing fancy, just pictures of birds, trees, and his own backyard. But the spark was back, not in a dramatic way, just a slow, gentle light returning. What often helps people in this stage of life is giving themselves permission to try one new thing. It doesn't have to be meaningful, it just has to be different. A new book, a new snack, a new time to wake up. Even rearranging your chair to face a different window can change how your brain processes your environment. Try doing something you've never done, even if it's small, even if no one else sees it. Let it be your quiet act of rebellion against giving up. You haven't stopped living. You've simply moved into a different season. And seasons are meant to change. There's strength in slow renewal. You're not starting over. You're continuing with more wisdom, more depth, and more room to explore. Even the tiniest change can crack open a window you thought was sealed shut. And who knows what breeze might blow in. Here's something I hear all the time, and it never fails to break my heart. I feel like a burden. And if you've ever felt that way, especially late at night when everyone else is asleep and your thoughts get loud, I want you to know, that feeling is more common than you might think. As we get older, our roles shift. Maybe we used to be the ones driving, cooking, earning, fixing, caring, and now some of that has changed. That shift can feel like a loss of value, but the truth is, your value doesn't come from how much you do, it comes from who you are. Still, I understand why it hurts. Psychologically, when we stop feeling useful, it can lead to isolation, depression, and even physical health decline. And yet, usefulness doesn't have to look like it did at 30 or 40. It can be softer, quieter, and just as important. I remember Martha, 68, from a small town outside Dallas. She lived with her daughter and teenage granddaughter, a kind family, but busy with their own lives. One evening, while walking past her granddaughter's open door, she overheard a phone call. "Yeah, Grandma just stays home all day now." That sentence stung more than it should have. Not because it was cruel, but because it felt like a confirmation of her biggest fear, that she was fading into the background. When she told me about it during one of our monthly support group sessions, I asked her what part of her day still felt meaningful. After a pause, she said, "Well, I do like helping Abby, my granddaughter, with her school papers. She says I'm good at editing." That small moment became a turning point. Instead of feeling invisible, she started offering gentle help. Not only to Abby, but also writing short recipes, stories from her own childhood, and even setting up a little memory journal where they'd add one family story per week. Over time, her presence stopped feeling passive. She became the keeper of history, the go-to for a kind word, the one who reminded them what mattered when things got hectic. No one asked her to do more. She simply made her being there count. 1. Of the simplest ways to shift this painful feeling is to quietly ask yourself, where do I still have something to offer? It doesn't have to be physical. Maybe it's your listening, your memories, your voice of calm when others are rushing. You don't need to prove your worth. You only need to share what's already inside you. That might be a recipe, a story, a blessing, a note on the fridge. Don't underestimate the power of quiet influence. You're not a burden, you're a presence. Sometimes your very stillness is what holds the room together. Think of yourself as the roots of a tree. People don't always notice the roots, but without them, nothing stands. You have that kind of quiet strength, and it matters more than you know. Here's another thought that tends to creep in when the world goes quiet. I didn't do everything I wanted. If you've ever stared at the ceiling and felt that dull ache of regret, maybe about places you didn't visit, words you didn't say, or things you never had the courage or time to try, you're not alone. As we get older, the mind naturally starts to scan back over the years, like a slideshow you didn't ask to watch. And while a little reflection can be healthy, too much of it, especially in the middle of the night, can feel overwhelming. From a psychological perspective, older adults often wrestle with what we call life review. It's a process where we try to make sense of our past, but it can also leave us feeling like we missed too much. I want you to know, even if some doors closed, there are still plenty of windows open, and meaning doesn't stop just because the pace has slowed. I remember Frank, 70 years old, a retired truck driver from Kansas City. He'd spent most of his life on the road, hauling goods from one coast to the other, raising 3 boys with his wife back home, and doing everything he could to be a provider. But what he really wanted, deep down, was to travel without a schedule, without a deadline, and without cargo in the back. He used to keep a small notebook of places he dreamed of visiting: Banff in Canada, the Northern Lights, a jazz club in New Orleans. After his retirement, he thought the time would finally come. But then his wife got sick, the grandkids needed help, and life kept finding reasons to say, not now. By the time he sat across from me at a group workshop, he said, I feel like I missed my life even while I was living it. That line stuck with me. But Frank wasn't ready to give up. We started small. He began watching travel videos on YouTube every Sunday morning with a cup of coffee. Then he printed pictures from those places and put them on the wall of his home office. Eventually, he began recording voice memos for his grandchildren, telling them about the roads he had driven, stories they'd never heard. This is my way of going places now, he said, by taking someone with me in my words. What often helps in these moments is creating what I call a living memory project. Pick one dream or moment you never got to live and find a way to honor it in a small symbolic act. You can build a photo wall, start a handwritten letter series, or record your memories on your phone and share them. Don't worry if it feels simple. The act of doing something in the direction of that old dream can bring deep peace and a surprising sense of joy. You're not out of time. You're in a new kind of time. And even a single act of imagination, a sentence spoken, a picture hung, can carry the spirit of that old dream into the life you're still living. There's no deadline on meaning. Sometimes a small spark is all it takes to feel the fire again. Sometimes the most painful thoughts are the quietest, like this one. What if something happens to me and no one knows? It's not always said out loud, but I've heard it enough times to know how deeply it sits in people's hearts. For many older adults, especially those living alone, the fear of becoming seriously ill, or worse, passing away without anyone realizing, can cause real anxiety, especially at night. And it's not just emotional fear, there's a physiological reality too. As we age, the risks of falls, strokes, or sudden health episodes naturally increase. That awareness can weigh heavily on the mind and lead to sleep disruptions, loss of appetite, and a constant undercurrent of worry. I want you to know, acknowledging this fear doesn't mean giving into it. In fact, it's the first step toward regaining control. I think of Linda, 74, from Mesa, Arizona. She's widowed, lives alone, and is generally independent, but the fear started creeping in after one of her neighbors was found unconscious days after a fall. What if that's me next? She asked. What if no one notices? Her daughter lives 3 states away and calls when she can, but it's not the same as someone nearby. At first, Linda didn't want to talk about it. She thought she was being dramatic. But over time, the fear grew. It started keeping her from going out, from enjoying her evenings, from feeling like herself. When she finally opened up during a check-in, we worked on a simple plan together. She reached out to her neighbor, Susan, someone she chatted with on and off, and they made a pact. Every morning by 10 a.m., they would text each other a simple good morning message. If one didn't reply, the other would check in. They even agreed on a backup, a call by noon if there was no response. That small system changed everything. Linda didn't feel alone anymore. She felt seen, connected, and protected in a way that didn't take anything away from her independence. Eventually, she added a second layer, a smartwatch with a fall alert feature, just in case. But it was that first step, that text message agreement, that gave her peace. What often helps in these situations is setting up a daily contact system. One of the easiest ways is to reach out to someone nearby, a neighbor, a friend, even someone from your church or senior group, and agree to send a short message or call at the same time each morning. You can keep it light, even humorous. If something feels off, you each know to follow up. It doesn't take much time, and it creates a safety net that's easy to maintain and emotionally reassuring. You don't need to live in fear to live with awareness. Think of it like wearing a seatbelt, not because you expect to crash, but because it gives you peace of mind to focus on the road ahead. Safety doesn't mean losing freedom. It means gaining the quiet strength to enjoy your days without looking over your shoulder. And that is something you deserve. One of the quieter but most painful thoughts I hear is this: I'm just not interesting to anyone anymore. It doesn't come with shouting or sadness. Usually it's said with a small shrug or a half smile, like the person has already accepted it. But that feeling of invisibility can be deeply damaging over time. As we age, it's natural to move into the background a bit. Kids grow up, work slows down, friends pass or move, and suddenly it feels like no one's asking about your thoughts, your opinions, your stories. And from a psychological standpoint, that matters. Because humans at any age need to feel seen, to feel alive. When no one asks you a question, it can start to feel like you've stopped existing in other people's minds. But that doesn't mean you have nothing to offer. Often, it just means the world around you is moving fast and forgetting how valuable your quiet presence really is. Let me tell you about Robert, 69 years old, from Springfield, Missouri. He got divorced 5 years ago, after a long marriage, and since then, he hasn't really rebuilt a social life. I've become wallpaper, he said to me once during a group discussion. I'm there, but no one looks twice. He still went to the grocery store, still paid his bills, still went to the same diner he'd gone to for years. But he told me no one remembered his name anymore, not even the waitress who once knew his usual order. That feeling wore on him, not all at once, but slowly. Until one day, he told me, he did something small. At the diner, instead of just mumbling his order, he looked the waitress in the eye, smiled and said, "How's your day been?" She paused, surprised, then answered. And the conversation kept going. It was brief, but it mattered. From there, he started showing up at the local library's board game night, not because he liked board games, but because he was curious. One evening, a younger man named Luis asked him what it was like growing up before the internet. Robert ended up talking for 20 minutes, and someone was listening. That was all it took. He didn't need to be the center of attention. He just needed to be noticed again, and to offer something real in return. What often helps people in this situation is starting with a smile. Truly, just that. Whether it's at the pharmacy counter, in the park, or while waiting in line at the post office, let someone see your eyes. People respond to warmth, even if they don't always say so. From there, follow your curiosity. A local class, a walking group, even a free Zoom talk from the library. These places are full of people also waiting to feel interesting again. You just have to let the door open a crack. You're interesting simply because you are you. Your stories, your opinions, your way of seeing the world, no one else has exactly that. It's like a book that was never opened. And sometimes, it just takes one reader to realize there's something special inside. Don't close the cover yet. Someone out there needs your story. Let me know in the comments which one visits you most often at night and which piece of advice you're ready to try. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. We talk here about simple things that make life feel lighter and brighter. And most importantly, you are not alone. Life goes on as long as you're still holding it in your hands, and each night can become not a fear, but a step toward peace.